Mario Cristobal just offered his revelation on why Miami's defense failed last year and why he trusts new DC Corey Hetherman to fix it this year.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On this episode of Locked On Canes, details on recruiting battles. We're going to see more Miami versus Georgia down the stretch in this cycle. Speaking of Georgia, Carson Beck made the move from UGA to Miami. We'll talk about his motivation for doing so and what he can accomplish in Shannon Dawson's offense. Can he follow in Cam Ward's footsteps? But let's talk defense. Mario Cristobal has done some really big interviews over the past couple of days with Greg McElroy on the Always College Football Show, with Josh Pate on the Late Kick, and specifically in the McElroy interview, Mario went deep on Miami's defense and what Corey Hetherman is going to do to fix it. And I applaud Cristobal's restraint because he probably had to bite his tongue a little bit to not criticize the previous defensive coordinator too much. But listen, to present the other side of that, I know some of us were frustrated with clearly Lance Guidry's defense not doing well enough, specifically from October on last year. But should Cristobal have maybe meddled a little bit more with the D during the season? You never want your head coach to micromanage too much, but perhaps he should have put a little bit more heat under the collar of Lance Guidry last year. But here's what Mario had to say about his new defensive coordinator, Corey Hetherman, who I think has a really bright future in Miami. Look at the job he did at Minnesota last year. Corey Hetherman is smart, tough. He has a ton of energy. He has a lot of answers inside his defense. Communication is at a premium, and he leads the charge. He has been awesome to be around, and we expect significant improvement on that side of the ball. Now, to simplify this tremendously, because we could probably spend like a whole week of shows talking about what went wrong for Miami's defense last year. But two of the major issues that I saw last year, something Cristobal just talked about there, communication, number one, and overthinking. Playing too slow, too many stunts and twists at the defensive line. That being number two for me when you talk about big issues. Cristobal continued on Corey Hetherman. The terminology and communication that go with it allows us to play really fast, he said, so it is delivered in a more digestible manner. In terms of the look itself, I think you will see some exotic stuff without confusing our players, he said. By the end of fall camp, we should have 5 installs of the new defense, and we feel really good about where our team is at and where it's going to go. So here's where Cristobal talks about the stunts and the twists from last year. Quote, there are a lot of explosive players that were maybe out of position last year. Some of those movements and stunts just didn't fit what we had. It was confusing for our linebackers and back end to be on the same page, which caused some chunk plays against us, which really hurt. And yeah, folks, there were more chunk plays given up than we could possibly count. And so many times you had safeties and linebackers looking at each other like, was that on you? Was that on me? What's going on? The communication was really tough. Cristobal says Coach Hetherman's defense really fits what we have recruited here at the University of Miami. We are recruited to be a 4-down operation with guys that can really get up the field and be disruptive. Last year, we morphed into an operation that was unrecognizable, Cristobal said. And, so that was from the Always College Football interview. Cristobal also said in an interview with Josh Pate that we'll talk about, he admitted that Miami's defense was easy to figure out last year specifically after about week 3. And Miami played their best defensive game week 1 against Florida. I mean, you saw that. You said, okay, this is the type of operation that's going to have Miami 11-1, 12-0 college football playoff. And, they still almost got there because of Cam Ward and the offense, but the defense let Miami down the stretch. And, okay, so Cristobal gave you reasons as to why he trusts Corey Hetherman and why he thinks Hetherman is going to be different and why his style fits Miami's personnel and fits Miami's recruits. Now, we look at how good Minnesota's defense was last year. I mean, Hetherman, 1 year at Minnesota, transformed that group from 69th in total defense to 5th in total defense. They surrendered just 285 yards per game. Now, Miami gave up 327 yards per game, but I think if you take like the first 4 games out of that equation, it's probably closer to 400. That was their season average. Minnesota gave up just under 17 points per game last year, 16.92, and Miami gave up just over 25 points per game at 25.1. And, you hope Corey Hetherman can get Miami's defense looking more like a Miami defense, right? I mean, when Miami used to win championships, it was so long ago, the defense really set the tone for that. When I think about some of what Cristobal said about Hetherman and his philosophy and, too many stunts and twists from last year, I can't help but think about our guy, the truth teller, right? Because he was shouting it from the mountaintops, and so many conversations that Bruce had with his friends who played defensive line at Miami back in the day, including Damian Lewis, who's now on the staff. So I know Lewis has input on it, being co-defensive line coach this year, and other, former Miami players that we had on the show would say, hey, too many stunts. You've got to go more direct to the quarterback. Let these guys play fast. Let these guys play instinctively. And the message was eventually sent and it was received. And that's what Hetherman is promising to bring to us. So, formation-wise, obviously the differences will lie in philosophies and finer points in the scheme. Like formation-wise, Corey Hetherman runs the 4-2-5 base defense, which is, what we've had for recent years here at Miami. But there's going to be a lot of differences out there. And personnel-wise, yeah, there are players that need to really step up or bounce back from last year. And I think Ruben Hurricane Bain was playing hurt all year last year. Still a guy who dominates in practice. He's got that dog. I think he's going to return to his 2023 form and hopefully even better. And it's also a money year for Hurricane Bain, who is eligible to enter the NFL draft after this season, is already getting some first-round draft projections. Akeem Mesidor is someone who had been playing hurt the last couple of years. Final year for him. He's looking again to raise his NFL draft stock for this year. Elsewhere on the defensive line, Justin Scott, heading into his second year, is going to have an opportunity, if not to start, to play, and probably will start, but an important rotational role at the very least at defensive tackle. But he needs to play like the 5-star recruit that he was. Linebacker group, this unit should shine this year. That's the unit that Hetherman coaches. He's the defensive coordinator and the linebackers coach. And I think the addition of Mohamed Toure from Rutgers is really going to make a difference there. Assuming Toure, who's coming off, a serious injury, but physically he's good. But does he bounce back fully from the ACL that kept him out of action last year? If so, Toure is someone who was one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten just a couple of years ago. The defensive secondary, that unit should be transformed. A lot of new faces like Xavier Lucas, cornerback Zechariah Poyser at safety, Keontae Scott at nickel, Jacoby Thomas at safety are going to play big roles this year. And Miami's going to have the second year now for O.J. Frederic, who, was one of the better overall cover corners in the ACC last year, was one of the few bright spots in the back end of Miami's defense. If he continues to develop and improve, Frederic, who, we didn't see him much in spring. He was nursing an injury, should be good to go for the season. These are ingredients that will hopefully play well and thrive in that Corey Hetherman defense. But let's shift our focus to offense on the other side. The motivation for Miami starting quarterback Carson Beck is being thrown out there. Will he follow in the footsteps of Cam Ward? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending and overspending on things like food delivery and streaming services, but now I budget smarter and I save a lot more money. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, even plan long-term goals in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I take you around the conference, all the big storylines, all the big football previews. Locked On ACC is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, so this was an interesting post by an account called NFL Rookie Watch about Miami starting quarterback Carson Beck. They make some interesting points, but I also want to add my own clarity and my own rebuttals for some of these points. So they say, hey, Carson Beck is reportedly attempting to follow the Cam Ward fast track to becoming the first overall pick. Beck has reportedly made it an internal goal to make the most of his time in Miami and increase his NFL draft stock into the top 5 picks. Well, first of all, who wouldn't want to do that? And we know, Beck, he knows that he and Cam Ward are different quarterbacks, but he saw what Ward was able to accomplish at Miami. Already when he was at Washington State, everybody knew, or at least you should have known, that Cam Ward had really good arm talent and was an effective quarterback, put up big stats, but then actually seeing him make that move, with the talent Miami had last year, and the talent when it comes to the skill positions is different. We'll get to that. Carson Beck is not going to have the same weapons that Ward had, but something Beck will have at Miami is an excellent offensive line, with that unit being almost the same as it was this past season, with, an opportunity to perhaps even be better this year. So in making that move to Miami, after seeing Cam Ward joining forces with Miami offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson, Ward raising his stock from third day to number 1 overall pick, obviously the opportunity to do something like that is going to be enticing for Carson Beck. And, Beck also, he's a team guy. He wants to try and win something at Miami. They continue. Several NFL scouts reportedly believe that Beck has the same tools Ward put on display in Miami to propel himself to the first overall pick. This is where that part of the tweet I've got to argue with a little bit. I think it's a little bit lazy to say that Carson Beck has the same tools as Cam Ward. He's got a very different toolbox, a different set of tools, but can also lead to success just in a different way for Carson. I thought J.D. Pickell at On3 Sports said it well about Ward versus Beck at Miami. He said what Ward did at Miami was a lot like jazz. Jazz being flashy, improvisational, a lot of individual in jazz, okay? Whereas Carson Beck, with him, it's going to be like a symphony. Everyone playing their part, everyone on time, everyone in rhythm. And rhythm is where Carson Beck thrives. And yes, for Carson Beck to put up huge numbers in Miami's offense, it's going to require everyone being on their assignments, everyone being on the same page. That's important no matter who your quarterback is, but that's going to be more important for Carson Beck versus Cam Ward, being the differences in the improvisation and all of the individual brilliance and all of that stuff. They continue. Mario Cristobal recently said he believes Miami is receiving the best version of Beck in his career. Probably the most motivated, right? We're yet to see if it's the best version, but Carson, coming off a season that was very good for him, but not the excellent that it was the year before. and a very good season for Georgia, but one that ended in disappointment, not a national championship. And Beck sees the perception of his draft stock dropping last year compared to the year prior. I will say this. I don't know for sure. I hope Miami is getting the best version of Carson Beck, but I can guarantee you Miami is getting the most motivated version of Beck, because if nothing else, 2024 and the obstacles that came with that, including his injury that he's just recovered and almost completely recovered from, that was probably a humbling experience for him, right? I mean, if 2023 he thought things can only get better from here, I'm at my peak, I'm at my apex. If nothing else, 2024 probably taught him there's still a lot of work to do. So I think Miami's getting the most motivated version. They say one NFL scout reportedly believes that it's quote unquote very plausible for Beck to lead the ACC in passing this season, despite sharing the same conference as Cade Klubnik. I mean, that could very well happen. I mean, if you just look at the individuals, you compare Beck's career so far to Klubnik's career so far. Cade Klubnik's best statistical season, easy for me to say, was last year, where he threw for about 3,600 yards, right? Beck's best season 2 years ago threw for just under 4,000 yards. So Beck has, statistically had a higher, yardage season that Klubnik has had to this point. Now, what the things that Klubnik has working for him this year, why he will probably lead the ACC in passing. He's got a more proven receiver room who all played together last year. Clemson's got one of the best receiver trios in the country. But Miami has a much better running back room than Clemson on paper, which means Miami might lean on Beck slightly less than Clemson is going to lean on Klubnik. So we'll see who throws for more yards, but I think the most important thing for Beck and for all of us is, if you do match up with Clemson, which will only happen in the ACC championship game if both of our teams get there, then, winning that ACC title, I think, is more important to everyone than who throws for more yards. It's all business this season for the new Miami Hurricanes quarterback. Here's what Mario Cristobal with Josh Pate on the late kick had to say about Carson Beck. Says he's almost at 100%, maybe a week away from being there. Cristobal said on an interview that debuted this morning. He's been throwing for weeks now. There's no limitations for him, and he looks great. So I think when Cristobal says he's almost at 100%, like, he's not talking about the injury recovery. The injury recovery is there. Like, he's good. No limitations coming off the UCL surgery. I think when Cristobal says he's almost at 100%, he's talking about 100% back to his form when it comes to a guy who hadn't thrown the football since, early December, the SEC championship game, hadn't thrown the football since first week of December, and then in late April was cleared to throw again, that he's almost back to 100% in terms of his comfort, his velocity, and his ability to make all the throws that he was able to make before the injury, because physically he's 100%. So I think when Cristobal says almost 100%, he means, shaking off the rust, right, coming after the surgery. Cristobal said he's really different from Cam Ward personality-wise, but not drive and determination standpoint, that he and Ward are the same when it comes to that drive. And that really hit us strongly, Cristobal said. His knowledge of the game speaks loudly. We brought in a person that has a lot to prove, he said, but more in the sense of winning and in the sense of team than anything else. And he wants to be pushed, Mario Cristobal said, which is, something Miami is always looking for. Mario has that old school 80s and 90s Miami mentality that you want guys who want to be physically and mentally pushed to the brink. I mean, Cristobal talked with Pate about how, back when Mario played football, he loved it when coaches would get on him after a mistake, chew him out, because Mario said it would motivate him. Like, he wanted to kick that coach's butt, but he also internalized it and said, okay, if this coach thinks I'm doing something wrong, I need to go out there and improve, and that's how I'm going to show him, right? You want guys that want to be pushed and motivated that way, and Cristobal feels that that's the case for Beck. And in terms of, Carson's personality, he's a little bit, compared to Cam Ward, most of us are. He's a little bit more introverted than Ward is. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, said, it took like a couple of weeks for, when Beck was at the facility for his personality to really come out, but that it eventually did come out. And, players like Mark Fletcher and Josiah Trader have talked about the type of leader Beck is, and they're rallying around him, right? And now that he's, cleared to throw and the player run practices, I believe they're having one today, by the way. I may be wrong about that, but I think there's something going on today that, Beck is able to really connect with his guys both on and off the field. And, in terms of some of Carson Beck's attributes that I think are going to fit Shannon Dawson's offense, and why, again, Beck, because for Beck, it was also about a football fit. Like, I need to go, because Cam Ward, just joined forces with Dawson last year, and it improved his draft stock to number 1 overall. Beck knew he had to find a coordinator that he feels comfortable with, and he feels he's found that with Dawson. So some of the attributes that I think are going to fit well with Carson Beck and Shannon Dawson, some of the outlines here from NFL Draft Buzz on the scouting report on Carson Beck: pocket technician, stands confident behind pressure, I should say. Ball placement artist with exceptional anticipatory throws, drops passes perfectly on shoulders and backs hips where only receivers can corral contested catches. Lightning quick processing speed translates defensive looks pre-snap into audible adjustments, often identifying mismatches college defenses desperately hide. Now, again, that when it comes to getting the football to guys like Malachi Toney and JoJo Trader, who are exceptionally talented, and CJ Daniels, to be able to make those anticipatory throws, I think is something that's going to help Carson Beck succeed in the 305. Let's talk some recruiting when we come back. Are we going to have Miami versus Georgia battles? We just won one of those with Jackson Cantwell. Welcome to the U. Is it going to be the same way for 5-star running back Derek Cooper and high 4-star offensive lineman Brett Colajay? You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. And if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up to become a Locked On Canes insider. I include the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours, show updates, recruiting scoops and predictions, breaking news for Miami, all sorts of analysis. Try it free for 14 days. Click that link in the show description below. Then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month, give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. All right, Miami has done a ton of work on the offensive line, as we know. Landing Jackson Cantwell was a coup. Miami being able to beat out Georgia and Oregon for him. And Hurricanes are not done recruiting blue chip offensive linemen. And another one of those that may come down to Miami versus Georgia is IMG Academy standout Brett Colajay, interior offensive lineman. He's got that nasty streak that Cristobal and Mirabal absolutely love. And playing at IMG, some people wonder, even with a guy like Cantwell, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. And by the way, Cantwell just set another high school record in the shot put. I mean, the dude is an absolute animal. He was close grip bench press, putting up 475 pounds. He puts over, on a regular grip, puts up over 500 pounds. Like, Jackson Cantwell is a monster. But I know one of the questions people have about Cantwell is, playing your high school ball in Nixa, Missouri, are you consistently facing the toughest levels of competition? And are you polished enough in pass protection? Because his high school team runs the football most of the time. So I don't think anyone questions Jackson Cantwell as a run blocker, but maybe haven't seen enough of him in pass pro to, really come to a full consensus. Now, if you're, going to join up with a coaching staff who can develop offensive linemen that way, you can't do much better than Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal. But when you talk about those questions of like the competition that you face, nobody has questions like that about Colajay at IMG Academy. And this one is being characterized as another possible Miami versus UGA battle. Now, for what it's worth, The On3 Sports prediction machine has Miami at the highest percentage to land him. I think a little over 25%, but you'd love to beat Georgia again for one of the top interior offensive linemen. And there are other interior offensive linemen that I like, and I think Miami really likes who are out there. I hope Miami lands all of them. Cannon Pickett out of Tampa area, Miami Legacy, that's another one we love, and I think Miami is the team to watch for Pickett. Ryan Moret from Southridge is another one that I love. He just recently picked up an offer from Georgia Tech. He's got 8 Power 4 offers now, his dad told me, with Miami, of course, included in that. And Ryan Moret is going to be making his official visit to Miami on June 20th. So, maybe that official visit could be what seals the deal for the Miami Hurricanes. Miami also recently, I think it was this past Friday or Saturday, the Hurricanes had coaches out in Brunswick, Georgia, to watch the spring game for top tight end Hizay Kent. Now, this is interesting with Hizay Kent because he really seems to be fully committing to being a tight end at the next level, because we've talked about him being 300 pounds, 6'5", 300-pounder, who is built like an offensive tackle but moves like a tight end. Kent has dropped already 20 pounds. He's down to 280. So he's fully committing to being a tight end at the next level. So 6'5", 280 pounds now. And Miami sent coaches out there to watch his spring game. This is a player that Miami's going to be battling for probably all summer long, whenever he decides to make his decision. I think he might have set if I'm not mistaken, I think he set a July 4th announcement date. So we're going to be battling for the next couple of months, month and a half or so for this player. See how that goes. And I think this is some good news. Jontavius Wyman is a former Georgia commit, but he's verbally committed to Miami. 4-star cornerback out of Jonesboro, Georgia. He has shut his recruitment down. So he's completely focusing on the U. He's not going to take any official visits this summer to any other places. He is completely focusing on Miami. We've also, in recent weeks, seen Jalen Seatbelt Waters saying the same thing, shutting his recruitment down, focusing on Miami. As many of those guys as you can get as possible, so we don't have to sweat so much about possible flips away from Miami. And, we mentioned one of the Miami versus Georgia battles. We talked about Brett Collegier. Derek Cooper, the 5-star athlete / running back out of Chaminade Madonna. This is going to be another one of those, I believe, with Miami and UGA being in the best position for Cooper. A lot of the indications we've been getting is that Miami is now in the lead for Derek Cooper. So hopefully we can keep it that way. If the Hurricanes can end up landing, let's say at least 2 5-star players in this recruiting class, this could go down as a class that rivals, the 2024 recruiting class that was in the top 5, and the 2023 recruiting class, which I think finished number 7. Mario Cristobal has got to build on that momentum, right? I know Miami fell short of their ultimate goals, and Cristobal talked about the disappointment of the way Miami finished last year, but at the end of the day, it was a 10-win season last year with one of the most exciting offenses we've ever seen, top offense in the country last year. So you want to try to build that momentum on the recruiting trail. Guys, make sure if you're enjoying this episode, you hit that like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Smash that like button. Subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. Definitely make the audio podcast part of your life, because you can take us with you wherever you go. It's really easy to listen to Locked On Canes in the car, on a jog. So make sure you subscribe to the audio version. By the way, we're going to be having Bryant McKinney on the pod tomorrow, because McKinney, he played a role in Miami's recruitment of Jackson Cantwell. McKinney helped make his pitch to Cantwell, 5-star offensive tackle. Now, Bryant McKinney was not a 5-star coming out of high school, but he ended up turning into a 5-star plus caliber guy by the time he got to Miami, and he made a recruiting pitch to Cantwell. We'll talk with Bryant McKinney about that tomorrow. He's going to join the Truth Teller and I on a Truth Teller Tuesday right here on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.